Picture this, a world of unparalleled opulence, of grand country estates and glittering London balls. A world where the sun truly never set on the empire. But then, in 1901, the queen died. And with her, an age. I'm Ibnul Jaif Farabi, and this is Empire Builders, the rise and fall of civilizations. Today, we're not watching an empire fall to invaders or revolution. We're witnessing something more subtle and perhaps more profound, a civilization losing its nerve. This is episode 38. The sun sets on Victoria, the Edwardian prelude to collapse. The Edwardian era, named for Victoria's son, King Edward VII, is often painted as a long, golden summer afternoon. And on the surface, it was. It was the age of the automobile, the telephone, and the first powered flight. For the elite, it was a whirl of champagne, Parisian fashions, and immense leisure. But this glitter was a thin veneer, a frantic performance of stability. Because beneath it, the very foundations of the British imperial civilization were cracking. The first crack was social. The rigid hierarchy that had propped up Victorian society was crumbling. Women were demanding the vote, marching as suffragettes and shattering the idea of passive femininity. The working class, no longer content with their lot, organized into powerful unions and the new Labour Party. The old deference was dying. You could hear it in the debates, see it in the headlines. The empire was built on a class system, and that system was now in open revolt against itself. The second crack was technological and military, and it came from across the North Sea. While Britain rested on the laurels of its naval supremacy, a newly unified Germany was aggressively building a fleet to rival it. The dreadnought race was more than an arms race. It was a direct challenge to Britain's existential idea of itself as the unrivaled sea power. And this new technology of war was terrifying. The very machines that symbolized progress, mass production, advanced engineering, were now being perfected for industrialized slaughter. A subconscious dread began to seep into that golden afternoon. The civilized world was building the tools for its own unprecedented destruction. And the third, most profound crack was intellectual. The certainties that had fueled the Victorian drive, faith in God, in progress, in the civilizing mission, were evaporating. The ideas of Freud suggested we were not rational beings, but driven by dark, unconscious urges. The physics of Einstein was dismantling a predictable universe. Modernist art and literature rejected old forms and harmonies, reflecting a world that no longer made coherent sense. The empire was built on a bedrock of absolute confidence. Now, the brightest minds were questioning the very nature of reality, truth, and human nature. When your civilization loses its story about why it's superior, it has already begun to lose everything. So, when the gunshots rang out in Sarajevo in 1914, they didn't cause the collapse. They merely pierced a bubble that was already straining. The Edwardian age wasn't the height of British civilization. It was its magnificent, anxious, final party. Everyone was dancing, but many could feel the floorboards sagging. The Great War that followed would provide the catastrophic, bloody finale, but the psychological and social unraveling had already happened in those 13 peaceful years. It makes me reflect on our own times, living here in New York, a city that often feels like the heart of a modern empire. We have our own glittering technologies, our own social upheavals, our own looming challenges that we dance around. The Edwardians teach us that collapse is rarely a single event. It's a slow retreat of faith, a quiet fracturing of consensus, a prelude whispered in drawing rooms and newspapers long before the first shot is fired. They built a beautiful, fragile world and spent a decade pretending it could last forever. For Empire Builders, this has been Ibnul Jaif Farabi. This podcast is a production of Light Knot Studios. Find more of our stories at https://www.lightknotstudios.com.